Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. It is a short little week, and we got so much to talk about on the backside of an ugly Ravens loss and an even uglier postmortem on Monday and Tuesday with COVID's popping left and right. They asked me last week, are you going up to Pittsburgh and eating Mr. Rooney's cookies with Yins and Not on Thanksgiving? And I'm like, nah, I'm going to do the turkey bowl with my wife and the cat. We're not having anybody over. Maybe a little Royal Farms chicken and some pumpkin pie. But I know a guy that is up there with Yins and That. Will Graves joins us again from the Associated Press of Pittsburgh. It feels like about a minute ago that we talked. I mean, sometimes we go like a year without hanging out. Now we're like zooming and all this stuff. And I mean, I don't even know if there's going to be a game, and I guess this is everybody's sort of worst nightmare, short week, tests start popping. But the Ravens have bigger problems, and I know the last time I got together with you, I don't think you really believed the Steelers would still be undefeated as the –
No, well, I picked the Ravens to win the game, I'm pretty sure, last time. And to be honest with you, the Ravens should have won the game. I mean, they pushed the Steelers around, and Lamar got sloppy with the ball a couple times, and that was the difference. I mean, and actually a story that I'm working on sort of setting the game up is – you know, Lamar talked about the Chiefs being his kryptonite. I mean, the Steelers have done a pretty good job of that in his two games against them. I just did crunch the numbers, and he's had 95 touches if you include dropbacks and runs, and he's turned it over 7 times against the Steelers. That's once every 13 and a half touches. If you go literally everybody else in his career, it's one turnover about every 78 touches. So the Steelers have somehow found a way to make him sloppy. Part of that is, look, their defense is really good. It's opportunistic. It leads the league, and they lead the league in, turnover ratio, which, as we know, is a big indicator, which is why they can average almost 30 points a game and be 21st in yards. That being said, I mean, I was stunned. I'm stunned the Steelers are 10-0. And it's weird. They have not played that well, and they have won games. And I still think Kansas City's the class of the league, but I think the Steelers – I don't know, man. Look, I grew up in the D.C. area. The last team that I remember that was sort of like this was the 91 Redskins. They were just really good. They weren't – I mean, and every once in a while they do something eye-popping. I remember they ripping through for, 6 touchdowns against the Falcons that year.
Dude, I was at the Oiler game that year because I was an Oiler fan.
Late fumble, and they needed –
Ian Halfield missed the field goal. Yeah. I was underneath the stands. I was with the old dude that used to wear the headdress that, was down on the field. Yeah, very, very much so. Yes. And so I remember that season, and yeah, I mean, they were a garden variety undefeated team in November.
I mean, they were, I think that's one of the more underrated teams in NFL history, but they were just really good. And this Steeler team sort of reminds me of that the defense is opportunistic. They do give up some yards, but I mean, and we've seen it time and again where, especially around the goal line, you can get down there, but getting in is a whole other matter. That's what's allowed them to beat the Ravens the first time. That's allowed them to beat the Cowboys on a game in which they were outplayed by Garrett Gilbert for 3 quarters, but they have somehow found a way. And I still think the Chiefs are the best team, but I think the Steelers might be as close as any team out there to having the antidote.
Well, of all of the weird things that, have happened here, this Ravens sort of falling down the mountain from the moment that the Steelers thing happened, they just have not looked like a good football team in 2 months. And I think now that we're getting on the other side, of the season and things are not going well, COVID-wise or any other place, you start to assess, what happened with Marshall Yanda and whether they're going to be able to respond without Ronnie Stanley and now Nick Boyle. You mentioned the Steelers defensively. I lost Devin Bush, and I think people expected that to be something not fatal, but you certainly didn't notice it. Minkah Fitzpatrick's just been a difference maker. All those guys. I mean, they're all just playing pretty good football right now and probably healthier than maybe the Ravens. A month out, if you would have said a month from now there'll be no Campbell, no Brandon Williams, no Ronnie Stanley, no Nick Boyle, I'd say, oh, that's not a very good football team right now. And as they're playing, they don't look like a very good football team.
Well, the Steelers have been luckier than most. I mean, they lost Devin Bush, as you mentioned. But you know what? Rob Spillane has come in, and I mean, the second throw against the Steelers, Lamar threw the ball right to Spillane. It was his second career start, and Rob was like, hey, look at this, and ran it to the end zone. And they have offensively, they lost their starting right tackle, Zach Banner in the first game, but Chuks Okorafor, who basically lost a close battle with Zach during training camp, has stepped in. And the offensive line, we're sitting here every week we pester Tomlin. Don't you have to run the ball? Don't you have to run the ball? Ben's throwing it 45 times a game. Well, guess what? He's not getting sacked. He's not turning it over. I mean, they have used those short passes as an extension of the running game, and they have been very efficient. I mean, it is, it's sort of weird. It's like they've put it all together. And, this is my 10th season covering the team, and they almost always start slow. They drop a couple games early where you're like, how did that happen? I mean, there was one year they lost to a Tampa team that went 2-14 at Heinz Field, blew a fourth quarter lead. Like they haven't done that this year. They've figured it out. That still being said, I mean, they should probably be more in the 7-3 range, but they're not. They're 10-0, and look, if they win this game, they've got the Washington football team next, and then they've got a tough one on the road in Buffalo, but then they've got the Bengals. And then they've got a home one against the Colts and at Cleveland. So I don't think they're going to go 16-0 even if they win this game. But I think 15-1 is definitely in play. And I think the best chance for them to beat the Chiefs is to be at home in January. And I think that they understand that. And that is why today we're sort of like, is this vibe not what it normally is because of the COVID stuff and because the Ravens are struggling? And they said, look, we guys still got a lot to play for. We haven't done anything yet. And I do believe that they firmly believe that.
Yeah, do they still play Renegade when the stadium's empty?
Yeah, they do, which is sort of bizarre. That's a tradition that I've never really sort of understood. But
I had JY from Sticks on last month. You can find that out at Baltimore Positive. He kind of explains the story as best he knows it. I remember when I liked that song, Will. Will Graves is here from the Associated Press. You can follow. Yeah. I was one day away from a Styx concert at the Warner Theater when they COVIDed this thing up. It was literally the next night on the calendar when everything shut down. I at least got a Cheap Trick show in down there at the Warner Theater. For the Roethlisberger career story, and you came in the middle of it. I mean, when Steinberg was running Roethlisberger around then at the Jacksonville Super Bowl or whatever the hell it was, Houston, whatever year he came out, he sat on my set and talked to me. And all these years later, 17 years later, here he is out there running around. And I don't think anyone is ever awestruck. It's not, oh, that's Tom Brady, or oh, that's Peyton Manning, or oh, that's Drew Brees, or whatever. He's sort of forgotten in that way. And I think maybe Tomlin goes along with that a little bit, that 10-0, maybe we shouldn't be surprised. And the two of them have really kind of done something special here during your time covering a team.
No, they have. I mean, it's the first year I was here was 2011, and my first quote Steelers assignment was covering his wedding. Okay, so basically I go down to some 2-lane road. I'm with a bunch of TV people. Steeler dignitaries kind of come by in SUVs, players and stuff. By the way, the only person that we saw that whole afternoon was Mr. Rooney, was Dan Rooney, Ambassador Rooney, which I think speaks a lot to just sort of him, right? I mean, he didn't sit in the back behind the tinted windows. He was in the front seat. And
he was never that kind of guy. I mean, I met him 100 times, and he was always eating a cookie and being nice to people.
Well, so anyway, so the wedding ends, and I walk back to my car. It's in a little strip mall about a quarter mile away. There's 4 Steeler fans in a RAV4. They're sitting there. They've got their little, those things, those beads you put on your chairs, right?
Yeah.
When your car, right, that was black and gold, and they were wearing their jerseys, and they said they were there to see if any Steelers had rolled by. And then I asked them about, what do you think about Ben getting married? And this was after some of his legal stuff. And they told me, I mean, this is my first Steeler assignment. They said, we think this is an arranged marriage by the Rooneys to clean up Ben's image. It's in my story. If you Googled it, you'd come across it. And I was just like, what in the hell am I gotten into here? And look, that being said, the man is.
I wonder how they voted last month. Oh, never mind. Yeah.
That being said, look, I mean, he's been married for. They've been married for 9 years now. They have 3 kids. Their oldest celebrated his 8th birthday. I mean, so obviously it wasn't whatever conspiracy theory those folks, but it just sort of speaks to where he was at in his career at that point in time. And I think he's definitely become an elder statesman of sorts. I do sense a calmness about him and appreciation. I think missing most of last year really did sort of bring into full attention that the light, that he is much, that the end is coming, and that, what does he want to be remembered for? I mean, his career is sort of weird. He had early success. And yes, he had a great Super Bowl, that great throw to Santonio Holmes. But if you ask people about those 04 team, the 08 team, even the 10 team that went to the Super Bowl, I mean, those were great defenses, potentially all-time great defenses. And then when he got the offense rolling with AB and Le'Veon Bell and Martavis Bryant and all those guys, I mean, the defense wasn't good enough, so they kept losing in the playoffs, losing to the Broncos, to Peyton Manning, losing to Tom Brady. And now I think that they've got for really maybe the first time in his career, really the balance has sort of evened out. And I think that the defense is really good, but the offense is also really, really good. And I think that, we keep talking. I wrote about it last week. It's come up this week. He's never received even one MVP vote. Now, the way the AP voting works, and us writers, we don't do it. It's a panel that we use that includes Hall of Famers and people around the league or whatever. But, I mean, like I just said, look, I pulled up 2016 voting just to look. And
if they go 16-0, is he not the MVP? I mean,
if you look at Mahomes' numbers, I mean,
fair enough. I don't know.
Mahomes is far sexier too, right? And he just makes it look cool. I don't think Ben makes it look cool. Ben makes it look tough.
Dude, be it for me to pimp for Ben Roethlisberger, but I mean, beating his ass has been really, really difficult around here. I'll be honest with you.
But I mean, think about it. I mean, even 16, he had a great year. They won the division. They made it to the AFC title game. And he didn't get a vote. Derek Carr got 6 votes that year. Dak Prescott got a vote. I mean, the fact that this guy's been doing it 17 years is a first ballot Hall of Famer probably, and the fact that he hasn't even I certainly think he needs to be in the conversation. I mean, I think if the Chiefs go 15-1 and the touchdown interception ratio for Mahomes continues to look the way it is, and he finishes with 50 TDs and 4 picks, I mean, that's impossible. I mean, that's like impossible. That's impossible in 7-on-7, let alone.
Well, it's like Lamar's numbers last year when you stack the rushing next to the pat, all of that. It'll never be done again. It'll never be done again.
Right, and I think that he should not be the MVP. I don't think. But when you look at it, I mean, look, they were 8-8 last year. One
more year, you're not giving him a vote, Graves. There you go. See, you wonder.
But I mean, they're 10-0 with him. I mean, and that is he is doing a very excellent job. He's not losing games, and people say, oh, has he lost mustard on his fastball? I'll tell you what, he looks better going downfield than Tom Brady does. I'll put it to you that way. He looks better going downfield than Drew Brees does. And even if he's not completing the passes that he might have 5 years ago, with the kids that he's got on the outside, with the Chase Claypools and the Washingtons and the Deontay Johnsons, the Jujus, he's getting calls down the field. I mean, they're good for one 25 to 30 to 40-yard pass interference call a game, just because Ben's going to flip it out there, and those guys are like, I can't guard this dude, and they tackle him. So it's impressive. I mean, even defensive coordinator Keith Butler today said people keep saying we're lackluster. I said, like, I've never seen a lackluster 10-0 team in my life, and I think that. They still like it. They thrive off it. Like, they don't have the swagger that the Chiefs have. They don't have the eye-popping playmakers. They just kind of go out and handle their business, and for them, that's enough.
Will Graves covers all things Steelers with the ins and outs for the Associated Press in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He's always great guest with us, whether it's the Penguins or the Pirates or Pitt or, in this case, the Steelers. And, you're going to the game, right? You've been attending, right? Yeah. Make sure you let me know how Mr. Rooney's roast and his cookies are on Thanksgiving. I think you get a nice spread on Thanksgiving.
No, we get boxed lunches for real. I mean, these are first world problems. I don't want to be like the media guy that complains about the food, but it is not the normal.
Well, I don't want to come then. If I can't have Mr. Rooney's cookies, I'm not coming up. I stopped traveling. I did Houston, I did Philly, and I did Washington. I did not go to Indy. Once the COVID thing started a little bit, that mess and that the monsoon in New England 2 weeks ago. Yeah. So I haven't been at the games. I'm missing this thing in Pittsburgh. There really is something special about this rivalry, right? And these teams getting together on Thanksgiving night. And even if the Ravens, everything's going wrong for the Ravens. Yeah, they still got Lamar Jackson at 11 o'clock on Thursday night. Still going to be a 3-point or 6-point game because that's what these games are.
Right.
But this rivalry is now taking on Egg Bowl status. They're playing it on Thanksgiving night and getting the teams together. It's still a great matchup every single time. And I think America, for the Washington and you and the Baltimore and me and the Pittsburgh and us, but outside of these markets, this is the best game in the league for everybody.
And I think it's been that way. I mean, it's just the staying power. I mean, when I grew up as a kid, I assumed that the Washington football team and the Cowboys was going to be the biggest game of the year every year for the rest of my life.
You were assuming you could just say their last name the rest of your life, but you can't.
And obviously that hasn't been. I mean, when you look at this, I mean, we're going back better part of 15 years that this has been going on. And I think that is, even more so than in players. And maybe, who knows, when Ben leaves, maybe when Ben retires, maybe it will change a little bit, because maybe there'll be a dip for the Steelers and the Ravens will have ascended. Who knows what's going on. I love Joe Burrow. I hope he comes back and gets the Bengals going. The Browns look at least competent, if not feisty. So who knows? But I think that there is a healthy respect because they've been doing it at such a high level for so long. There is a ferocity when these guys. I mean, that first game in Baltimore was. I mean, the game on Sunday night with the Raiders and the Chiefs was pretty good. And there's been 2 or 3 other pretty good games, but that might be the best game of the season so far. And I think there's a chance that this one might be the next one in line, because I think that's the one thing they consistently deliver tight games. They're physical, but they're not dirty. And I think they almost always have stakes, which is all the ingredients you really need for football, regardless of who's involved.
You know of my relationship with Coach Tomlin. He and I were texting back and forth a couple weeks ago. And I guess it goes without saying at this point, and I would say this about Harbaugh as well, because, Harbaugh's liable to win on Thursday and go up there and slobber knock, because it happens, right? One of the things about this ride, these are great coaches. Tomlin's a hell of a coach to have this team where it is, and this has been a hell of a run on both sides.
It is, and I think, Mike – I'm not sure. I don't think Mike has won Coach of the Year either, and I think that he probably – there might be there's some guys that are sort of in the running for this, but I mean, he has done a heck of a job considering the circumstances and considering, look, they've had their own COVID scare a couple weeks ago. They get on the flight back from Dallas and they land and Vance McDonald has COVID, and so they put him on the list and they lost a couple other people. Ben spent that entire week, basically at home, and then was cleared on Saturday, played on Sunday, and they won easily. So, that's part of that is having a good nucleus, but part of that is sustainability, part of that is coaching, part of that is the respect level the players have for him. And this is, and I believe, trust me, that the respect level between the Steelers and the Ravens, and to Harbaugh specifically, is very real. It is. I think they have so much. They both franchises do it the right way. And looking at the Washington football team as an example of how franchises don't do it the right way.
I have a baseball team here you can take a look at too. So.
And I think that there is just a lot of, we appreciate the fact that we get to do this and do this in front of, hopefully on Thursday night in front of 30 million people, and it's going to be a great product. And I think that's a testament to both coaching. Now, if I will say this, if the Ravens are as shorthanded as they appear to be, it would be one of the bigger upsets of the year, I think, if they could pull it off. I think the Steelers would have to lose the game maybe more than the Ravens would win it at this point.
Once guys started popping on Monday, after we get our ass kicked on Sunday and Derrick Henry runs you over again, I just tweeted out Monday morning when the COVID test started popping with the running backs. I'm like, maybe it's not our year. You get a little bit of that where maybe it's just not going to go well from here on out.
Well, I wouldn't say that. You look at the Titans had their extended scare, and then they came out and they played really, really well. After they dealt with it, and then the Steelers beat them and they dipped a little bit. Now they've gotten it back together, and beating the Ravens was part of that. I think that considering like there's going to be 7 teams in each conference getting in, I'm sure the Ravens will be in the playoffs as long as Lamar stays healthy. But I still think that the way that they have lost is surprising. The way that they have been sort of pushed around a little bit.
Arm tackling at the end, escorting a guy into the end zone with the game on the line. Not good.
No, and I think in New England is not the New England of old, but even in that, the conditions were horrible in that game, to be sure. But when the plays were there to be made, it was the Patriots that made them, and I think that is maybe the most surprising part of. And you would have thought, the Ravens would have learned from getting punched in the mouth by Derrick Henry last year. It happened again. They had that game won, and then they didn't. And I think Lamar said something that they wanted it more, right? That the Titans wanted it more than they did. That's when your captain or your leader says that is a red flag. And it'll be interesting to see shorthanded how they respond emotionally. I think they'll be up for it. But that being said, if the Steelers have their way on Thursday, I don't think that's going to happen. Like if they win, I still think it'll be relatively close. But if Steelers have their way with them, then I think you're right. I think it's definitely time to think about, well, this sort of sucked, but our quarterback's still one of the bright young stars of the league, and we'll be fine long term.
Yeah, it just hasn't looked good. The body language, both sides of the ball, just, all the way around. This year's looked a lot different than last year. Will Graves is here. Will Graves AP. You can find him in the Associated Press up in Pittsburgh. Always generous with his time coming in here and hanging out. All right, look, man, you're a special guy. You've had a lot of you got some great stories about things to be thankful for, much like me and my circumstance and my wife and just where we are in life right now, trying to bunker down, wash our hands, put a mask on. Tell me what you're thankful for, man. Tell me what's on the buffet.
You know what? It's look. I'm. If the folks that aren't listening don't know, I'm a cancer survivor. I got diagnosed with a weird form of lymphoma. It's like a chronic illness more than it is like going to kill you. But I've had 2 bouts with it, starting in 14 and then again in 18. Got through it. I got a wife and 2 kids. They're 9 and 11. And the weird part was, I think, and I was talking to my friend about this very recently. At a different point in my life, if I'd been stuck in my house with my immediate family for months on end, it would have been tough. And like we have become such a great little unit that every day is fun. I mean, as crazy as it sounds, my kids are at the age where they're self-sufficient enough to do their own schoolwork over Zoom or but tight enough that, I mean, like literally they come into the bedroom in the middle of the night sometimes still. And heck, there was one night on a couple nights ago where literally one came in and we have a bed on the floor, and then one of them was in there, and then one of them came in between us. Both the cats were on the bed.
It's a Graves campsite. It's a big.
It was just sort of cool. I mean, do I get a little frustrated? I'm like, because sometimes I'm old, right? So sometimes I just want to sleep. But I'm also aware of how fragile this window of time is, and that soon enough they will be out of the house. And I mean, like, I talk to my mom once, twice a week. My mom still lives in Waldorf, Maryland. But I haven't seen her since she came up over the summer, late summer, when the weather was still okay. But she's in her late 60s, and she's worried about us coming to see them. And so it sucks because she wants to stay healthy, but she also wants to see her grandchildren. She wants to see me. But I mean, I'm lucky. I work for a company where we have stability. That's not the case for a lot of media outlets in this environment. I'm grateful that we have the standards that we are, which allows me to sort of absorb the slings and arrows when people talk about the media, and I got a job that I'm still pretty good at. I mean, but it is sort of telling, I write a lot of stories, and on Twitter, I'm still relatively anonymous or whatever. But the other day when Tomlin made the Big Ten versus the MAC thing, talking about playing the Jaguars, Ben was the next day, and I lobbed one up for him, and I said, hey, Ben, your coach took a shot at the MAC, and Ben went to, Miami of Ohio, which is in the MAC, and he said, I'll clap back at Mike T once I figure out what conference William and Mary is in, which is where Mike T went, and that went viral on Twitter in a way that none of my stories have. Does that get a little frustrating sometimes? I mean, because I wrote a pretty good story a day or two later, like, nobody cares, right? It's just like, what kind of...
Well, I saw the picture of all the MAC guys, too. So there was a long tail to that story.
Right. But that being said, I mean, look, I am thankful. On Thursday, my in-laws moved here to Pittsburgh about 3 years ago. We're hoping to see them, but my sister-in-law teaches, and the school that she's at had it. Some of the staff members have it. She doesn't have it, but she's not sure if she's been exposed or not. They're still waiting on test results, so we're not sure if we're going to go over there on Thursday or not. And it's better safe than sorry. Does that suck? Because there's really only so many of these. The older I get, the more I realize you only get so many of these, right? Even if it's 75, it's still only 75 compared to the rest of time, right? So, I am thankful that they're here. And look, I have it pretty good, and I try to. Some days I wake up and I get cranky. Some days I go to Twitter. Some days I look at the news. I see people,
saying stupid stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, like I think we talked right before the election last time, and I was very concerned about that. I did some work on election day. I helped with our news side. I was calling, election officials in Western Pennsylvania to look for irregularities and all this stuff, and that's why I took these claims of fraud, like, not personally, but it was just sort of like, somebody's like, how come the media isn't reporting this? I'm like, the media is looking into this. I was looking into this, but the fact that we couldn't find anything is telling. Like, we didn't print anything because we couldn't find anything. And I think the president was just, I use the analogy of, it's like me going to the bank and saying I'm a millionaire, and then the bank saying, we have no evidence that you're a millionaire. And then me saying, no, I am, you just haven't found the money yet. I mean, like that, you can't, that doesn't make any sense, right? And yet that's what was happening. That being said, I have
goes along with the character of the whole program. If you've been watching the movie,
I'm thankful that we are hopefully maybe entering into an era where things are just calmer. Like that's all I really want. I mean, I'm the most protected. I think I mentioned this last time. I'm one of the most protected demographics in the world. I'm a 46-year-old, college-educated white male in the United States of America. Like every rule in this country is made for me specifically, and I'm hoping that we are entering an era where everybody gets sort of raised up to the same level, the same playing field. Everybody's taken into account. That's my hope. And I'm thankful for you. You're out here doing your thing, man. So I appreciate you giving me rope. I mean, when I go on local TV here, trust me, I don't get to go down this road, which is probably a good thing for my paycheck.
But I think this has been. Biden just passed 80 million, votes, right? And Trump had 70, 73, whatever the number is at this point. The fact that bad times in the modern era led to so many people being involved and knowing what a senator is. I had Chris Van Hollen and I had Ben Cardin on last week. And I literally went Schoolhouse Rock with them. I'm like, Chris, tell me what you do. Tell me what a senator does. Tell me what we have all this Loeffler and Warnock, all this stuff going on down in Georgia. Tell me what you do when you get there all day long. So, I'm trying to do a little civics course here, which is kind of how the whole thing began, quite frankly, which is I think we all need to learn more about how all this operates. And I think during this period of time, some people have learned misinformation, but a lot of other people who already knew something know more because they know me now, and I've thought enough to have these people around to be the village idiot saying, I don't know everything, but you're a congressman, you tell me, and I think we should have more discourse like that. And I think we will moving forward. Your kids will be more aware than you and I are because this period of time is going to make everyone aware.
Well, I hope so, but we're also, my 11-year-old he pays attention to the news now, but we live in an area that's still, there's a lot of conservatives in our area. They're friends of ours, and we understand that, their personal feelings in one area of their lives does not bleed over into our feelings towards them. But that doesn't mean that when my kid is home and doesn't hear me and my wife kind of, piling on certain subjects, and then he repeats, I'm like, you can't repeat that in front of your friends.
Well, it's amazing. You and I are trained journalists. This is all I've ever done in my life. I'll be 29 years on the radio next week. I was at a newspaper for a decade before that. I mean, I was trained by grown-ups, where I's and T's are crossed and dotted and the Oxford comma, for crying out loud. All I've ever done is stand in front of people who may or may not want to be honest with me and look at them and say, are you full of shit? You know what I mean? That's why I've been doing that my whole life. So, at every level, and I'm from Dundalk. So I just don't think most people in our society have spent a whole lot of time with critical thinking, right? Literally.
Well, you just distilled my job into its essence when looking at somebody and asking if they're full of crap. It's literally, that's 80% of it, right? I mean, it's,
yeah.
It's
and if you've always been honest with me every other time, I'll never doubt anything you say. I mean, Brian Billick could tell me the moon is full of green cheese and cabbage, and I would believe it because he's just never lied to me in 22 years. And there's a part of that with your family and people that you trust that's part of the deal of life for what we do for a living is I'm going to put my name at the top of it and your words underneath of it. You better not be lying to me.
Well, I mean, it's funny you mentioned that, and it's funny. I think of James Harrison. James was a guy who was not fun to be around, but when James talked, he didn't lie. He told you the truth, and when he was done, he was done. But he didn't waste my time. I mean, there's a lot of players that just feel like they have to stand in front of us and move their lips, and we'll just do write down whatever they say. And sometimes that's what happens. But I mean, I have far greater appreciation for guys that are a pain in the ass, but at least I know they're being honest with me. And Debo certainly falls, into that, falls into that realm. I mean, AJ Burnett, former a Maryland native, a Baltimore, the Pirates pitcher who bounced around a bunch. I mean, he got in the Hall of Fame. He was on the ballot this year. He's obviously not going to get in, but he's been kind of using the opportunity as a chance to do like a career retrospective, I guess. And he's been making the rounds. And AJ's one of those guys, same way. Like, won't always talk, but when he talks, he gives it to you straight. And that's what I appreciate. And I wish that more athletes were like that. But then again, look, I wish that more journalists were like me, right? And so unfortunately, that's I mean, I'm getting kind of old too. I mean, I look around sometimes and I'm like, there's some really young kids out there that I just, I want to grab them and be like, kid, this is like how you have to do it. I mean, I was on a Zoom today where somebody kept talking about like their children, and I'm like, nobody cares, man. Like, I don't bring my kids up, in these interviews, especially in this. I mean, I might like personally.
Well, you know what's fascinating now? The Zoom things are like
do your job.
They're like hostage videos at this point. Like,
Sort of.
yeah, and I sort of joke about it. I asked my very first question of the season on Zoom with Lamar after the game. So I haven't asked questions because, if I'm not going to get any sort of answer that matters. And I think for sports journalism in the last 7 or 8 months, I know they're happy we're not around, but I think there's going to be some cost to like missing some intimacy with the fans a little bit. Certainly with the Ravens here, there's no access action,
right.
no nothing. And, the fans hear from Lamar after losses for 3 minutes and on Wednesday for 3 minutes, and that's that. And that's not going to help sports sell itself. I guess
I'm with you. And I mean, look, I miss being in the locker rooms. There are guys that I would go to, David DeCastro, for example, being one of them, where you can just go up to their locker. You don't have to interview him. You just kind of say, hey, man, what's going on? He will basically just tell you what's the vibe is.
Football's great like that, isn't it?
And yeah, I mean, and you just not having that this year. I mean, we were talking about that today. I was talking with Mark Cavalli, and we were talking about the Chief Award, which the Pro Football Writers Association chapter gives. It's a media award. It's like whichever player was nicest to us. And we were sort of debating whether there should even be one this year because they are sort of like hostage videos. And there are some guys this year, James Conner very specifically, who come on with us on Fridays and look like they would rather be anywhere else in the world. And look, I'm fine with that. I understand that this is not comfortable for everybody, but it is part of the job. And it is literally 5 minutes out of your week. And if you can't, so the people that help you make money, I mean, what do we do, Nestor? What do we really do?
Well, Will, the interesting thing.
We promote their product for free. That's what we really do.
Of course we do.
We are literally the best free advertising in the world. I'm not telling you that you have to suck up to us. I'm not even telling you that you have to be nice to us. Just be professional. Just be courteous. Because I grew up wanting to be on the field, and that didn't happen. I turned out to be a pretty good writer and kind of stumbled into this. And I'm pretty good at it. And I'm always fair. I mean, I am always fair. I mean, that's the one thing I might not turn out to. I wanted to be Tony Kornheiser when I was 17. That obviously hasn't happened. TK, a far greater writer and journalist.
I wanted to be Oscar Madison. It worked out well. I got a leg lamp.
But I mean, that being said, like, I wish you're right. I mean, some of these Zooms are like performance art. I mean, it is like some of these folks have never been on TV before. And so and this is like their gateway to, getting on. I mean, I am famous for asking really long questions, but somebody said to me the other day, well, your questions have gotten shorter. And you know why? Because of this. I don't want to be on the camera stumbling. I'm not necessarily stumbling around, but sort of like, going into my 87-point question. Do that at a locker room but it's different so I'm just like, get to the point and then get out of there. And some people just use it as a chance to just preen. And I mean, today, one of the TV guys here in Pittsburgh had his Emmys on in the background of his Zoom. And I was like, and he's a good dude. He's a good dude. I like him a lot, but I was like, jeez. Just get to your question, man. Just get to your
I like your curtains, by the way. You have a nice
slot. Yeah, I'm in my sunroom that has no sun and will not have any sun until April.
You live in Pittsburgh. You don't deserve sunshine. That's what you get for living there. Will Graves is here, the Associated Press, and, of course, covering yins and that, not even getting a cookie from Mr. Rooney on Thanksgiving night. Look, man, I will miss the trip, but I'll look forward to getting back up there. I'll look forward to having you back on again sometime soon. I don't know if we're going to play any hockey, whether we're going to finish football. Who knows what's going to happen. But I hope you and your family have a beautiful Thanksgiving. What do you got, sweet potato, a turkey? Or what are you doing?
Sweet potato is the one thing I do not – that is literally like the one vegetable I won't eat. Just can't. Even the smell of it makes me nauseous.
Pumpkin pie then? What do you do,
pumpkin,
apple? What do you do?
I like – but yeah, we do pumpkin. I'm the only one that eats it, though. So then, like, my wife's like, well, I'll make one for you. And I'm like, but then I have to come to the grips with the fact that I just ate an entire pie. I might not eat it in one sitting, but if I eat it in like a day and a half, that's still a lot of pie in a day and a half. So
wife sent me into the store on Monday night, into the Wise Market, and she gave me a little list of a couple things to come out with. And she said, look, if you get some pumpkin pie, whatever you want. So I went in, the pumpkin pie was fresh made, and it had like the condensation on the top, and I could feel the heat underneath. It was $5. I'm like, we're leaving with a pumpkin pie. It's one pumpkin pie of the year. I'm not going to have a pumpkin pie on Thanksgiving. It's not American. It's like not having eggnog. By the way, we're doing a big, speaking of pumpkin pie, our friends at Taharka are going to be shipping this ice cream to everyone here, $15.70 off throughout the holiday. You can get the pumpkin spice latte. You can get the pumpkin pie cheesecake. You can get the eggnog, the peppermint bark. And don't listen to this, Will. The sweet potato crumble is the greatest thing I've ever tasted in my life. I had a bite of it the other night. It's incredible, and you can order it. So there's my plug for Taharka and our sponsors. Will, if you were local, I'd deliver it out to you. But, when you get down here for a game, baseball, we'll figure out your kids in a game when we all get our shots and we can all go out. And I'll even drink an IC Light with you if I get an opportunity to do that, all right?
All right, man.
From the Iron City, happy Thanksgiving to you and your family. It's always great having you on, brother.
See you.
You got it. Will Graves, he is the Associated Press in Pittsburgh. Will Graves AP, and he's a great, great radio guest. And he should have his own show up in Pittsburgh. So him and Kabali.
Amen to that.
No, yeah, you and Kabali and Bouchette sitting around drinking and bitching about things. That's what show I want to listen to. How about that?
Thanks, Nestor. Be good.
Or it's my show all week long. Ness at BaltimorePositive.com. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, everywhere the internet travels, even to the Three Rivers. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. We never stop talking Baltimore positive with Pittsburgh people.